The cruelty of a father. The relationship between Zuko and Ozai is one of the most important in Avatar: The Last Airbender, and yet we barely ever see them together. Their relationship doesn't exist through shared moments, but through what remains, through memory, through the pain. Zuko's face alone tells their story before he ever says a word. His scar is not just an injury, it is a proof of what happens when a father no longer sees his own son as his own, but as something that needs to be shaped. From the very beginning of the series, we start to understand what happened between them. But the more we understand, the more complicated it becomes. Because yes, their relationship is toxic, but it isn't simple. It isn't a clear case of good and evil. It's something else. Something deeper. A relationship where two people want completely different things from each other and break because of it. Ozai is the villain of the story, not because he believes he's doing the right thing, but because he knows exactly what he's doing. He doesn't hide behind ideals or morality. Ozai knows exactly that he hurts people, and he doesn't care. He openly talks about burning entire cities, not as a sacrifice for a greater good, but as a way to gain even more power. He already has everything, and yet he wants even more. Not because he has to, but because he can. And maybe that's the difference. Ozai is not misunderstood. He isn't broken. He isn't lost. He is decided. In the first 2 seasons, we barely see him. Only a shadow, a presence. Something that exists in the background and still controls everything. And even before we truly see him, Aang fears him, not because he knows him, but because he understands what Ozai represents. Up to this point, Ozai seems like a clear villain, a figure who knows exactly what he's doing and doesn't apologize for it. But when we look at his relationship with Zuko, it becomes more complicated. His cruelty doesn't begin with the Agni Kai. It begins much earlier. When Zuko is born, it isn't even clear if he can firebend at all, and for Ozai, that's a big problem. Not because he's worried about his son, but because of what it means for his reputation. A firstborn son who cannot firebend is not a disappointment to him, it's a disgrace. Ozai doesn't think like a father, he thinks like a ruler. Like someone looking at the throne, and the one who will inherit it. To him, Zuko is not a child that needs to be loved, but a successor that needs to function. And if he doesn't, he will be replaced, or removed. Ozai's version of love is success. At the War Council, this becomes even clearer. Ozai allows Zuko to be there. After his respected uncle went with him, he gives him the opportunity to listen, to learn. But the moment Zuko questions the general, everything changes. What is compassion to Zuko is disrespect to Ozai. And in his world, respect is not optional, it is required. So the Agni Kai follows. And for the first time, we see how far Ozai is willing to go to enforce that lesson. The Agni Kai is where everything changes. Ozai uses very specific words. Honor, respect. Now it gets interesting. Something is missing. He never speaks about punishment. To him, the Agni Kai was not a punishment, it was a lesson. And that's what makes this moment so disturbing. Zuko was not hurt because Ozai was angry, but because Ozai believed it was necessary. The real punishment came after the banishment. And from that moment on, we know Zuko's story. A son who does everything to regain his father's approval. He hunts the Avatar, he sacrifices everything, just to be allowed to come home. And when he finally returns, we see something that almost feels like affection. But even that is not what it seems. Because there are only a few moments where Ozai truly tries to teach Zuko something. And almost all of them happen in a single scene. During the solar eclipse, when Zuko confronts his father, he asks a simple question. How can a father justify a duel with his own child? And Ozai's answer is crucial. Not as punishment, but to teach him respect. In Ozai's world, it was right. And when Zuko tells him it was wrong, Ozai responds with one thing, that Zuko learned nothing. That's the moment it becomes clear. Ozai doesn't understand Zuko. Zuko sees the pain. Ozai sees only instruction. And then something even more interesting happens. Zuko declares that he will help the Avatar, that he will turn against his father. And Ozai doesn't respond with emotion, not anger, not rage, but something else. He accepts it, almost like he's challenging him. As if he's saying, if you want to be a traitor, then be one. In that moment, Ozai is powerless. The eclipse has taken away his firebending. Zuko is armed, he could end it, and Ozai knows that. But even then, he stays true to himself. He applies his own logic even to himself. No fear, no regret, only conviction. Zuko wanted a father. Ozai wanted a perfect heir. And because those two things were never the same, their relationship was doomed from the beginning. Zuko spent his entire life trying to please his father, while his father never understood what his son actually wanted. And in the end, when everything is over, when Ozai is defeated, and Zuko no longer needs anything from him, they face each other one last time. Zuko says that his banishment was the best thing that ever happened to him, that it was there, where he learned everything, not because of his father, but in spite of him. He sees his uncle as his own father, and loves him as such. And then he asks Ozai one final question, not about power, not about honor,